Titus, and I'm Thomas, and this is Everyone is Bad at Magic, where we untap, upkeep, and punt. You guys can't hear this because it just played in our Discord, but we're using a bot called CraigBot. I know that you're not a huge avid reader yet, but I need to turn you on to a series, and this was not what we discussed at all. But I started reading this book series called Dungeon Crawler Carl at the beginning of the year. It's like a lit RPG. So it is straight up a MOBA or not MOBA, MMORPG in a book form. And it is one of the most addictive, funny series I've ever read. And the voice from that bot just took me directly into the fucking audiobooks. And it made my day because I read like start to finish every book in the series in 3 months. I was so unbelievably hooked.
Consumed a bit of your time. It almost sounds like maybe some Leroy Jenkins meets Sword Art Online.
I don't hate that description. I mean, the premise is a dude from Seattle goes out for a smoke break or something. He has to chase his cat out outside, and then aliens descend, kill 99% of the Earth's population, and he gets lured down into a dungeon where he has to go and survive and try to beat each level. Each book is a level of this dungeon where people are trying to fight to survive and like keep humanity in line so that we can as a species like survive. It's deeply like a fucked up concept, but the way it's delivered is so funny and so raw. I mean, the cat's name is Princess Donut, and the first thing that happens is she gets sentience from like a magic cat biscuit. Unbelievably funny. I strongly recommend it if you ever get a chance to pick up either an audiobook or a paper copy. It's really, really good.
More of a paper person. It's just one of those things where you got to get started and dilly dally, right? But people do that with television series and movies as well. And the sad reality is you end up enjoying it very much so, but you just put it off because you're not. It's like one of those things you create excuses. Next time. I'll do it later. It's late.
Yeah, it's hard to sit down with a book. We live in a world where there's constant distractions. Like my phone's so much more addictive than these pieces of paper that don't move around and dance for me.
Colors and notifications.
Yeah, it's instant gratification. It's dopamine in a box. That is definitely something I recommend checking out. I digress. I believe today we're talking about breaking into different formats in Magic the Gathering because you and I met over CDH a number of years ago, probably like 3 or 4 at this point. It's been a while. And we've been talking a lot lately about new players and how to get our friends who are newer to the format or just acquaintances into different formats, as well as different formats that we are looking at. So, do you have any thoughts about good ways to break into a specific format or just into Magic in general?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier in today's day and age. In the past, when we had dial up internet, we didn't have as much resources available to us. MTGO or Magic the Gathering Online has been around for a while, but if you think about it, right, we can now go to different sources or apps and see, like, hey, there's an event going on, or do you know where a locals is running? Friday Night Magic, look up on your WotC, or even look at store pages, whether it be on their social media. There's so many things, but I think Arena and Magic the Gathering Online are pretty good resources. But I think one of the things people enjoy more so about the game, and everybody brings this up, is the gathering. So the social aspect. Honestly, it's just taking a look and asking the internet and Google questions.
I think that's a very well reasoned out thought. One of the things that you mentioned was starting off with Arena or MTGO. I think that having a rules engine in front of you that just knows the rules for you in a game that is literally hundreds of pages of rule books is a very helpful tool, but it is kind of a crutch and something that newer players need to watch out for. When I've been guiding a new friend into how to play Magic, they spent months playing Arena, and when we got out of that arena, for the lack of a better word, they no longer had that engine to lean on to kind of play the game for them. So they were not really knowing how the phases worked, or they didn't understand how certain rule interactions worked because they were used to the game playing itself. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think that's a fair statement. So if we look at untap, upkeep, punt, one of the things, yes, relevant. I think making mistakes, right? So there's play groups, and a lot of people will not look online. And this is actually going back to the top. We have so many great resources that you can look up rules online and get things corrected. But I do think there is still that social dynamic where some people may feel confident about something or may get the rules wrong. When you got people with a good understanding, when you try to do something like getting corrected, or even if you go through with the move and then somebody's like, looking at a table over and tells you after and be like, that was an illegal game action, or like it doesn't work that way. I think those sort of things unfortunately stick fairly well. If you look at your negative experiences, sometimes stay in your mind more than your positive experiences. Not to say that's a good thing, but you might interpret it that way right now. I think that's just gaining experience, right? So those social dynamics and getting like people tell you, hey, that's how this works, or make a decision, because like you said with Arena, right? Picking up like bad habits or not really paying attention to rules. I think the same thing happens in paper. If you're not actively paying attention to what's going on in the game, then you're not going to learn the game.
100%. And there's definitely something to be said with that for having a friend or a person in your local space who is maybe a little bit more advanced, or a judge, somebody who can somewhat act as a rules engine for you, or somebody who you can bounce questions off of. I always forget the name of the site, but there is a website out there with judges that just hang out where you can enter questions into a chat and get your answers usually within a couple minutes. Hey, this is Thomas from the editing room. It's chat.magicjudges.org. That's saying nothing of Gatherer being a resource or Scryfall being a resource. And I mean, I hate to say it, but if you Google up a Reddit post with a relevant rules question, chances are the most upvoted question or answer is going to be the answer to your question. And if it's not exactly the same interaction, you can usually find an interaction that's close enough using similar effects. So while it's not quite as clean of an engine as Arena, there are ways that you can learn through those same mistakes or same conversations when you might have a disagreement or when you're unsure of those rules. Also, the other part of breaking into a format that might be difficult is knowing what the formats actually are and what people are actually playing. Because where we are, I'm not so sure people are playing pre-modern. I don't know if there's a vintage scene. These are not things I've seen people playing.
That's fair. Something tells me, I don't know, vibes that there is like vintage around, but pre-modern, I would agree. Those things also though just might be adopted by like a small group of people in their local area, or just some people online. But look at Dan Dan
Yeah,
Dan
Dan.
Dan, getting the anime mixed up with the
Good
format.
anime.
But yeah, you take a look at these things, and it might just be some people do online, or maybe when they go to like an event or a con, something like that, where you say, "Hey, do you want to play this when we meet up there?" Yeah, it sounds good, or they just bring it with them. That can be another thing too. I think when you look at people playing Commander, just having extra decks, or just even another modern deck or another legacy, even if it's proxied up, to hand somebody to play with them. So you're creating social, like that engagement, right? And with that, I think you're fostering or facilitating some positive like vibes from the situation where somebody might be more interested or curious or feel okay to ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So, speaking of the different formats, are there any particular formats that you're interested in at the moment?
Yes. So currently, well, I know we're both looking and branching, trying to branch into stuff ourselves, and that's the other thing, right? Trying it, whether you're advanced or you're intro, it's still finding the opportunity to do those things. CDH being a big one, Commander being another. Popper is one that I am very interested in, and I think it's a very like base form, like if it feels like you got more stuff going on, at a modern or legacy level, and people may correct me on that. That's cool. You can correct me if you want to.
Leave a comment below.
On a more basic note, I think it gives like a good structure. If you're not giving somebody a complicated deck like one of the combo decks, I don't know, with like Dredge or with like High Tide, or with Cycle Storm or Poison Storm, just things comboing, and they still may pick it up, especially if that's their preference. But saying like, hey, you're new to Magic, here is Elves, that's a little more combo-y, but here's another green deck, here's a mono white attack deck, Tolarian Terror, right? Just being fairly easy with the mono blue terror. Just, hey, you interact a little bit here and there, you slam down a big creature for a cheaper cost, or even like Burn, right? Burn stays pretty consistent amongst the formats in its premise. Outside of that, what about you? I know that you've brought up Legacy.
So, like you, I am very much interested in CDH. I don't know if you said CD or TDH. I'm personally not interested in tournament EDH. I do not have the mental stamina for that. I just like going to locals. I've been branching back out into casual commander lately, which is pretty big for me. I haven't been really playing over the last few years. Much like you, I've been picking up Pauper. I built Ultratron recently and been having a ton of fun with that. It's a little bit more of a complicated deck, but I like anything that can turn 3 and doesn't cost more than $50. So that's super fun. I'm also really interested in Legacy. It's been a format that I've been following for a while. And just through my natural proclivities as a CDH player, I have most of the cards already to where I think I could translate into playing Breakfast Nadu, which is the Nomads Encore deck, just based off of the cards I already have, and only be maybe a dual short. Unfortunately, for Legacy, at least locally, most of the nights are proxy free. So I would have to dip into Shocklands in order to play that out, and I'd still need to flesh out my Force of Wills because I only own one. I do think that Legacy would probably see a lot more play if it was more proxy friendly. That's not something that I can really enforce at store level, so that is what it is. Against my best judgment, I've started trying to play Standard as well. I put together VV Cauldron on Arena. Feel free to hate me as well, comments below and such. But that is just because those are the cards I opened. I'm really interested in the Simic Omniscience deck. That's pretty much just Kona.deck. I think that's a really cool way to play, and I'm hoping to build that one next. But I'm not super dialed in on Modern. I think that it's really cool after we watched the Pro Tour a couple weeks ago. I'm really interested in all of those really cool lines. That one, oh, what was that control deck? Was it just blue white control that had Orum's Chant, Isochron's Scepter Loops? It was freaking gross. I didn't know that that was even a thing in any format. Anything you can do broken things in, that's where I want to play Magic. I even my most basic level 2 decks are gonna be broken combo decks that just happen to be $50 and don't do it well. So that's what I'm interested in as far as formats go. Basically everything, I guess, at this point, except for vintage and modern, because I'm not really looking to put together a modern deck. I haven't really looked at the format. I just want to play broken combos. That's who I am as a player.
I think that's fair. Well, if you look at it right, at all levels, like if you want to do limited and construct, and actually that might be a good way for people to get into the game. Sure, you'll have to deck build and kind of figure it out. But again, utilizing resources, maybe watching like so many YouTube videos where people may break down the process for you. You watch how somebody drafts. Those may be good ways for somebody to get into the game, build up a paper collection a little bit if they would like to, and not even have to invest in a deck and still get certain experiences, and maybe see a combo here or there depending on which pre-release event. Outside of that, if you take a look at like what you want to do with the game. You mentioned broken combos, and the fun thing about Magic is there's different ways to approach the game. You can approach the game through combat damage. You can approach the game through, direct burn damage, milling somebody out. Now, are all the strategies created equally in every format? No, they are not. We have changes in the meta, we have shifts, different dynamics, things that go on, whether somebody introduces somebody new or discovers something, or something gets printed and it shakes things up. And you can approach like from a gameplay mechanic, like, okay, well, how easy is it for something to shift or change? But I think that's part of the fun of the game, is that there are different ways to do things and you can find out what you enjoy. And I think that people really shouldn't be ashamed too much in that aspect, because you look at like CDH, right? And one of the archetypes that may not be the strongest, depending on how it's done, is stacks. And it's not that stacks shouldn't exist. And, individuals may be like, oh man, I don't enjoy this matchup. It's a part of it, right? If you get blown out by rock size, sometimes they have it in their opener on their on seat one and nobody had interaction. And even with mulling, right? It's variance. I think that's something for people to discover too, is, what they like, what they want to do. And I think there's a variety of way to approach that, right? Like VV Cauldron, in paper, that's expensive. In Arena, not as expensive, right?
Cost next to nothing, especially since you could pretty much open VVs for free off of the one of the draft environments that they were giving free tokens out for Final Fantasy. But as far as draft goes, are you a limited player? That's never been something
No.
that's really interested me. Yeah, I could maybe do cube, but probably vintage cube if I'm honest. I don't know the card pool well enough to really play in any pre-releases, because I haven't really been paying attention to the endless litany of releases that Wizards has been putting out. I know that
Fair.
some people love it. I know that we're going to try to cover as many different aspects of Magic as possible here. I can't see us ever really talking too deeply about Limited, though. Speaking of the resources that we've used to get into the formats that we follow, obviously there's things like EDH Top 16 that we're using pretty consistently or that I'm using pretty consistently. I can't speak for you for decks like Terra, but for my main deck, which is Revi, I'm pretty much exclusively using Scryfall at this point. I'm not even using the discords that are set up specifically for commanders. There's things like EDH Rec, MTG MTG Top 8, MTG Goldfish. There's tons of great resources out there on the web. Are there any ones that you particularly use?
It's going to be a lot of the similar things. You can maybe look like at the Gather at Oracle, but Scryfall, you can use it for other formats, I believe, as well, if you're just looking for certain text. Arena's pretty good at that for typing in certain things too and seeing what cards pop up to build around. Yeah, Goldfish, MTG, Top 8. MTG, I'm going to probably not say this correctly because I'm sometimes bad at saying things. Haruya. Is one that I like to look at and see if anything pops up on there. And I check the different
That's the
formats.
Japanese tournament software for
Yes.
those who don't know.
But looking around, even like looking at random Google searches, right? You may have somebody pulls up a Mox field, pulls up a conversation thread. Variety of ways to go about this.
Yeah, for those who don't know, though, Scryfall Advanced, you can filter cards out by legal formats. You can look by different colors. You can put in different lines of text that you're trying to hit, different keywords, different types. It is a incredible tool, and you can drag and drop cards directly from the site into your Mox field lists. Could not recommend it highly enough. It is it's a research tool that feels like pre modern internet. It feels like the good old days from well, we're old, from our youth, when it was the wild wild west and there were just things that existed for the good of them existing.
Oh, EDH Rec is another one. I know some might have their qualms with certain things that it influences in deck building and it may show a lot of cards, but I think if you learn how to use the site, it can be a good resource. And especially in it's where I see a lot of bad combos that I want to adopt for CDH. If you go in the combo section, you can look at like the color combinations and say like Azoria, Selesnya. And honestly, sometimes they use that like, oh, I want to look at Bant, but does Bant show me all the color combinations for Selesnya, Azorius, and Simic, right? So learning to play around with the tools is a good way to discover new things.
Shout out to Critical EDH, by the way, for teaching us this. But if you're in your Moxfield, which I personally use for my deck building, underneath the search bar, there's an EDH Rex button, which will show you the most commonly used cards in your list that are not currently in your personal list. And it is a very cool tool that you can use. I like it. It's pointed out things that I've been missing from my list that I may have overlooked or I may have cut for other cards a long time ago and forgotten about. Very, very helpful little tool. So once we've gone into a specific format, generally speaking, we want to learn what the meta is. Every format has a meta, and I can say that I personally have generally been a little too stubborn in every format I try to break into, and I won't go and play the best deck. I just won't. I can't make myself do it. If it's on the top line, I'm generally trying to like avoid it, and I'm looking down at like the 2 to 5% played decks. Like, this is technically meta. This is probably close enough to a real deck that I can learn to play, and it's not the most popular thing. It's the hipster in me. I wish I could kill it. It probably set me back 2 years in my CDH career or playing habits because I was trying to make Carmella and Minsk and Boo work for the first year, and then Marnius work for the second year before good enough cards were printed for the deck. But I strongly believe that any new player should probably just net deck for meta decks when they're trying to get into a format in a very much do as I say, not as I do way.
I would concur. It's going to be the safer route, right? You don't necessarily like it's good to think about net decking. Like, why are they including this? What do these things do? It's all a part of the learning process. And some people get on people for net decking. Like, at least it felt that way in the past for 60 card. And I mean, the other thing is though, why do people have a problem with that? You know, if you're going into a competition too, are they like, oh, well, this is locals, you know, whether it's 60 card or it's a 100 card singleton. I think if you're getting into the format, getting into the game, sure, there's other things that you can always take away something or learn something, but you get a solid basis. You get kind of like a guideline or a general rule book, and then you can expand upon that. So I'm for new players learning whatever net deck kind of appeals to them, what kind of consistent thing that's showing up there, and then if they want to branch away from that. Plus, you know, playing against other players, they may see things that they want to change to. You know, it may open up a new experience and say, oh, I really like that, and I kind of want to do it, right? I agree with you. I don't necessarily play the most busted or broken decks all the time either, and personal choice, and it may not be benefiting me as well. The other thing is too, though, if you evaluate what kind of person you are, there are some people that get into the game and they're just like, I want to do that. Don't care if it's not meta. I want to make it work. I love it. And if you can go in there, and you may face some struggles, but if you can go in there with a good, you know, attitude or outlook and just say, you know, I enjoy playing the game, I'm making tweaks to the list, checking out different stuff, then, you know, for that person, that's great. You know, the thing is, people have to do what suits them best. And having an honest conversation with yourself about that as well, and say, like, what's wrong with me playing a good or meta deck, or, you know, not to say that non meta is not good, but it may come with additional challenges. It may come with a higher learning curve, right? Hate to bring it up, but it's the easiest thing for definitely a certain timeline. But you look at League of Legends, I used to watch streamers in the past say, why are you trying to play Lee Sin? Because Lee Sin can do all this complicated, cool stuff, but champion can fall off pretty easily in the late game. And, you know, it may just be easier for you as a player to play Warwick or Nunu.
We're kind of saying why it's fun not to play meta stuff. One of the reasons why I am a huge advocate to actually play a meta deck, or at least a very strong deck in a format when you're starting off, is when I started playing Tivit, my game leveled up immensely. Not necessarily because I was playing a deck that I had net decked or because I was playing the strongest deck in the format. Spoiler, it was still blue farm at that time, just like it is now. But I was playing a deck that was good enough that I could learn the rest of the game around it. I wasn't so bogged down by the deck I was playing. Like if I was trying to play, well, for lack of a better example, Derevi, which I play now, I would be so busy trying to learn my own deck and the intricacies and trying to basically play with ankle weights that I wouldn't be learning about window control. I wouldn't be learning all the decks at the table around me. I wouldn't be learning where it's important to interact, how to win second, how to create windows by phasing out a specific stack piece instead of removing it, when to deploy a stacks piece instead of a counter spell. And I think that that is a super valuable part of playing something that's just inherently strong that you will probably be missing if you're playing something that's off meta because you're just struggling to keep up because you're playing probably a weaker deck.
That's the thing, right? And I think any person can make that determination. And sometimes, though, starting with the fringe thing and then realizing, like, look, I need to spend some time getting my fundamentals down. You learn how to do something like, say, you want to go play a sport, you look at your form, learn how to do more technical stuff after you get at least a good understanding of something. But again, everybody is different. You can approach it differently. And not to look at failure as a negative word, but to look at it as our mistakes, our bad plays, things like that. If you take a look at them in a healthy way and say, like, okay, what can I change next time? What can I innovate on? And playing some non-meta, you might need to refine a little bit more. So having like the proper tools or equipment might help you a little
Yeah.
bit more.
There's nothing wrong with learning from your mistakes. You're probably going to learn that lesson a lot deeper. But it's more fun to win from, or it's more fun to learn from your victories, I guess is where I was going with that.
Well, that's just capitalizing on other people's mistakes.
I mean, if you are in a position to where you can do so, it definitely helps. When you are first starting to get games in, what's your preference? Are you trying to mainly play online, or are you mainly playing in stores, or are you just playing at the kitchen table with buddies?
Open to all of the above, but currently it's when there's an opportunity to play, and that is a relevant statement for people getting into the format. Like, what do you have around you, or what kind of access do you have online? Nowadays, we have some pretty cheap webcams that, can get us there. You have a laptop or something. Playing online and some local here and there. Preference is definitely to play in person. I'm not the best with setting up my spell table. And I feel like I'm confined and I don't want to make a mistake. Don't want to have like a problem or an accident because again, those feel bad, right? But you learn from them, say, okay, I need to tune up my gameplay, tune up my focus. But I like the more range of motion with other people. How about you? Do you prefer the in person or the online?
Well, I mean, I'd love to lie and say that I love going out to shops or I love to host Friday Night Magic at my place. But if I'm honest, Titus, I don't want to wear pants. I want to just be at my desk, slinging cards over spell table in a Discord. I play Magic most nights of the week, even if it's just one or two games from the comfort of my own home. And I think that's just kind of become my preference. And I will make it out to like a local tournament or Friday or Saturday night once or twice a month at this point. Now, I think I might have to branch out a bit more because I really do want to play a little bit of Pauper and Paper. I do want to play a little bit of Legacy and Paper, and that is going to require me to go out to shops because I am not part of those communities online, at least not yet. So I'm going to be making an effort over the next couple of months to kind of get out of my comfort zone and go and meet some new people and go and try to find some games at stores I don't usually go to. So that's where I'm at. But there's some wonderful communities out there where you can find games pretty much whenever, as long as you're comfortable using Discord.
Yeah, agree. I think that too, like going outside of the comfort zone, finding places, and especially for a new person, that can be a little intimidating. You look at even with somebody with experience, it could still be, like socially hard to do. Like, hey, I'm more shy or an introvert. But you take into consideration like having to learn the rules, right? Not wanting to make a mistake. And unfortunately, it's going outside your comfort zone. That's how you meet people, that's how you connect, that's how you get a better understanding of the game. You got to play the game is one of the main things. Any game, right? You're afraid, oh man, this boss keeps kicking my butt. Stuff like that. You just got to keep trying, and sometimes you change it up and you do something a little bit different. But I mean, standard nowadays feels like modern. So let's before.
Standard's really strong right now. Kind of build on your point just a
Yeah.
little bit. I really do think that Magic in general these days lives on Discord. It lived in Reddit for a while, it lived in forums before that, but even outside of just like hyper niche formats, I belong to like several Discords just in our city that are just meetup groups. And they are places where people put in where they're firing games. On our local subreddit, my wife sent me a message the other night saying, "Hey, this person said that they just found Magic like this week. They're looking for advice on how to play." And like just sent them a couple comments like, "Hey, where are you getting to? Where are you looking to get started?" Sent them a couple of discords to find games because I think that's kind of where we're at. I think that's kind of where we're going. And if you want to play in paper in person, this is probably the way that you're going to be able to find people most easily.
Yes. That's one thing. And just look up what stores that you got around you too. Sometimes just talking about the game, right? Talking about like what formats you're into, or oh, that's a cool thing. These come up in conversation, and people bring up like, oh, did you hear about this location? Oh, I didn't know they opened up that store location yet, right? So just having conversations. I think being open-minded is a big thing too.
100%. And speaking of getting started, there's the one last big elephant in the room. Magic is fucking expensive. This has become not just like a casual hobby, this has become a luxury hobby.
Thank you, Ezra. Thank you, Ezra.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. And it's also become really popular, at least over the last few, since the pandemic. My first time playing Magic, which was back in like 2009-ish, or no, yeah, 2009-ish. Packs were cheap, building decks were cheap. Second time getting into Magic around like just after high. Oh God, I'm old. I was playing Magic around 2001, then 2009. Oh God. Okay. Well, that's neither here nor there. Now to build a standard deck, just looking at the most popular ones, you're ranging between $200 and $600. A modern deck's gonna cost you 700-800. Legacy, you're looking at 4 grand on average. I don't know how much most common, like regular commander decks cost. I'm assuming between 50 and 800. I'm not even going to pretend to say how much my CDH deck costs, and I don't want to think about it. I know that there are some of our locals who have blinged them out or in like the 20, 30K range. God knows how. They must not have houses. But Magic is not cheap. So for newer players, are you recommending like MTGO, proxying, or just bite the bullet and start building up a collection?
There's so many ways you can approach it, and some of them may not be the best way financially, and that's occasionally how we learn delayed gratification there. That's where the limited might be a good way. You're able to get some games in. The other thing is too is looking at budget decks, and sure, you may not have the highest win percentage, but you get to sit down and play a game, and to say that they can't win, they can win. When the opportunities present yourself and you change out some cards, you can build towards a deck too. Change out cards over time, and that's any format. Uh, Casual commander, right? It's pretty open, and there's a plethora of things you can do. You can build a pretty optimal commander deck on a budget, and I think that's what's appealing for it. The other thing is why CDH is so big, right? And I think it still would have a lot of attention. I just think we might see more suboptimal decks. Is the fact that it's proxy friendly for the most part. Not every store is proxy friendly, and not every event is proxy friendly. There's Star City games, and it makes sense why they can't be. But I think that too gives you a plethora of decks. Sure, there may still be deck diversity because your deck choice may be influenced by your budget.
As it should be, by the way. People should not be overspending on cardboard. You do not need a Gaia's Cradle
Look,
if you cannot afford a Gaia's Cradle.
look.
And just to piggyback on that, people look at duels and think they're the end all be all for lands in Commander. They're not. Fetch lands are so much better than having duels. If
Monocolor
you have a
decks.
full set of fetches, that is so much better than having. You should have fetches even in modern colored decks, in my opinion. But that's a whole
It
nother topic.
depends. It depends. And Commander, you can take a look at what you want to do, and even like what is optimal, right? There's so much variance, you know, where we're looking at cards. But I do think that the entry being proxy friendly with CDH has generated a lot of interest in it and has increased potential deck diversity. You could say, well, no, there's more blue farm. Well, I think people are more willing to branch out. And then we have to take a look at locals versus tournaments, right? If you're going into a big tournament, whatever the format may be, you're probably going to either choose a deck you're fairly comfortable with, or you're going to choose a deck that you believe can win the event. You take a look at all these content creators, and they have people that are looking to invest in what is going to be good, taking the time. But that's different, right? We're not trying to be uh, super in depth into a format to go to your Friday Night Magic. You can maybe go to like a con or an RCQ or something like that, but you don't like.
We're not grinders.
Yes, a people have covered this. There was $100 like or so legacy deck that won an event. Maybe it was only like 32 people. I don't remember the number, but there are a bunch of cost efficient ways to play Magic the Gathering. Are they necessarily the ways that you want to play? They may not be, but there are ways to do it, and there are decks to do it. Burn, burn, burn. Outside of burn, looking at Pauper versus the other formats, why I think there is more appeal to it than we realize. It might be more so on Magic Online, but Pauper, what's different? Why is it not as appealing as standard or modern? And I think you look at the power level of the cards, but I think the other thing is too what looks cooler, right? You're looking at there is cool common art, but you're looking at like, ah man, my favorite character, Vivi's on a card, played in standard. I really want to play that deck, or oh, that seems so cool. And yes, they are, but or like the arts. I think look at my fancy arts.
I can see where you're coming from with the fancy arts. I think the main reason Pauper hasn't taken off in the big way yet is it lacks official wizard support. I think if that format gets it picked up the way that Pioneer had, we will see Pauper pick up in a big way. I'm a little worried that that might up the prices of Pauper decks, at least in the short term until reprints happen. But I do think Pauper is probably going to grow in a big way in America because it is huge over in Europe right now.
you can brew a lot with it too. There's people that,
There's space.
yeah,
Yeah.
you watch some of these shorts and shows the variation in like 5.0 decks, and you have channels like Kalikaz and a few others that show that there are people that play around with things. You can brew within the format. There is a large card pool in Magic the Gathering, especially in
Yeah.
formats that don't have the rotation.
Yeah. It is not solved at all. And that said, I like it. There's no top deck. It is a wide open format. You can play any of the top 20, 30 decks, and you can feel very comfortable with them. All right, Titus. Anything else you'd like to add to that before we pretty much wrap up here?
No, I think that we hit a lot of topics, and you can expand upon these even further. Magic's a game with a lot going on, with a lot of different formats. I think that's why it's pretty great, right? It can be overwhelming, but if you again ask yourself a question of what I want to do and just start jumping into it, and I think when you start jumping into it, you start figuring stuff out. But how about you, Thomas?
We're up to 26,000 something cards in the pool. Most of them are unplayable. I think that it's really fun to set deck building restrictions, and that's what makes it interesting. So, as long as you find something that you have people to play with, you're in good shape. It's about the gathering. Anyway, if you stayed with us this long, please consider giving us a like, follow, or subscribe, and comment depending on how you found us. Remember, be kind to each other and be kind to yourself. It's just a game.